we ready? Ready, set, go. All right, I think we're good. Welcome to another episode. Denny is with you once again, back at home, chilling here with a cup of warm ginger and lemon. I'm told this is good for detox, so we'll give it a try. Hope you're doing well out there. Hope your 2026 is off to a decent start. Like me, nothing much has changed as far as anything crazy going on in my life. I did have a very busy day today. I was working a lot, making some money, hustling. Some of you know I'm a locksmith. If you're new to the channel, I work for myself. I do lock and door work as my primary income, and I've been self-employed for a couple of years now. So some of my videos is not only bachelor lifestyle stuff, but I do touch on work and like job and career type things. So check out my channel if you are curious, and you can watch some of the other videos where I have some opinions and share my story and cover those topics. So feel free to do that. And today I thought I'd just chat a little bit more about the kind of the men versus women. It's not really men versus women, but the changing landscape of dating and relationships, and what men specifically are going through, some of the challenges and the changes that have come about in the past generation. As Bob Dylan once sang, "For the times they are changing." I can't do a Bob Dylan voice, but I was a pretty big fan, not like a huge fan, but I did appreciate what he did. I think he was a great artist for that generation and had that longevity. So kudos to him. Hope you're doing well, Bob. I know you're in your 80s now, I believe. But yeah, as far as the changing tide and the changing landscape of what men, young men especially, even more towards middle age like myself, is just something we need to explore and talk about. Otherwise you drive yourself crazy trying to figure out what is exactly happening. And and I was just, the reason I'm making this video is I was wondering to myself in my mind recently, how much of a correlation and how much of an influence is technology on things like the male virginity rate, the male loneliness epidemic, the divorce statistics, just people not connecting anymore, the dating scene floundering in a lot of ways. And I was thinking about this because as I travel around for work, like as I was saying, I go all over the city, all over the suburbs, and I'm in a lot of different streets and parking malls and parking stalls, different businesses and all that. And I don't know if it's just me, but have you noticed, like wherever your city is, whenever you park next to somebody, it seems like 50% of the time that there's a person in the car, like the car's not empty, and there's a person just sitting there on their phone. They're just looking down at whatever they're doing, scrolling or texting somebody. Now I understand, like, especially me working for myself, I know that I get a lot of requests through text messaging, like from my clients and emails. So I am looking at my phone as well, but I did eliminate the scrolling on social media. I don't really have social media really. I do have Facebook, but it's just more to keep in touch with some friends and family. But most of my social media is just YouTube, basically. Like I make these videos and I comment on other videos and I do consume a lot of the content. But as far as like that doom scrolling, they call it, on Instagram, Facebook, all that bullshit, I think that's very toxic and very damaging. And it does take up a lot of your time. And I did realize I was wasting a lot of time on that. And you don't know where the hours fly when you're doing that, because it's like playing a video game. You know, you could feel like 5 minutes, but next thing you know, you've been at it for 6 hours and it's 3:30 in the morning and you haven't eaten or slept enough, and it's just madness. And you have to wonder if things like social media, smartphones, video games, how much of a detriment have they been on the dating scene and on the male loneliness epidemic and the male virginity rate? And I mentioned just now, it's seemingly 50% of the cars you turn to look at, there's a person on their phone. Well, 50% coincidentally is basically a statistic that's kind of shocking and alarming. I knew these things have been changing over the generations, as far as there's a lot more male virgins out there, but it seems like just in the US alone, I'm in Canada, but just for this thought experiment, we'll use the United States statistics, and I'm sure it's very similar to Canada, you know, similar culture and people and all that, and we share the same piece of land and every town and city has a McDonald's and Walmart and all that bullshit. But for the sake of this, I was reading this. It said half of US men under 30 are virgins. We need to stop dating apps and bring back drinking in bars. This was some post, social media post. But I was looking at some statistics, and you know, there's been like a 15% increase in the number of virgins in this since Gen Z was a thing. And how it's changed from the 50s and 60s, where it was very rare for a male to be a virgin. You were actually looked at as kind of a freak and a weirdo. But now it's like apparently half. And there's like other statistics too, like even millennial men, I think 50% reported that they've not had any sexual partners in the past year. So a lot of men are going like full couple years in between sexual partners, and then a subset of those are not having any sex at all. And it's kind of shocking, because you think like, okay, if even 50% of men are getting laid, it's like, what percent of the partners they're getting are actually like more subjectively attractive women or objectively attractive women? I know it's supposedly subjective. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, or in the eye of the beer holder. But just kind of applying a reasonableness standard to it, you know, a girl that's not overweight and, you know, past her sexual prime, so to speak, you know, the 50% of males that are having sex, what percentage of their partners are in that category of female versus the younger, thin, more attractive, healthier females? That number of men is probably even lower. Maybe only 20-25% of men are having any sex whatsoever with the more attractive women, and then possibly even a lower subset of that, maybe 5 or 10% of men are having sex on a regular basis with objectively attractive women. So as you go down the line there, it gets really it's doom and gloom. It's really rough out there. I mean, to think that you're probably, you know, an average guy watching this, you're like most likely in that 80% that's either not having sex, and if you are, it's probably not with the most attractive women. So Yeah, and I bet the 50% that are virgins that aren't having sex at all, they would be happy with anything, but they're getting rejected by everybody, and that's kind of scary. And that just was not the case back in the day. I, for example, was a late bloomer. I was a virgin till considerably late at the time. We're talking early to mid 2000s, and I was 27 years old at the time, which was considered late in that era. I'm a Gen Xer, but just on that cusp of millennial. You can almost consider me a millennial. I missed it by like a year or something like that. But it's crazy that back then it was such a stigma. You know, you guys remember that movie, The 40-Year-Old Virgin, with Steve Carell? That comedy. It was in that era of the raunchy comedy movies and the politically incorrect era, which was very fun. And they haven't made fun and hilarious movies like Old School or Superbad, 40-Year-Old Virgin. All that stuff is great. If you're my age, you definitely remember that stuff. Tara Reid back in the day, and Shannon Elizabeth, and all these hot women that were the starlets of the day. But see, when that film came out, the reason why it was popular and the reason why people were intrigued and interested in it is because just that title, 40-Year-Old Virgin, that was like, you were in a very low percentile. And especially people at the time, like that came out in 2005 or like 20 years ago. So even if you were, let's say, 30 or 35 years old at that time, you'd be 55 now. So back in your formative years, that would have been, you would have been in your 20s in like the early 90s, basically. And definitely at that time was different. I mean, 40-Year-Old Virgin back then would have been, you know, just the one weird kid in the neighborhood or something like that. So that's how much it's changed, because a 40-Year-Old Virgin now is really not that big of a deal. You tell somebody you're 40 and never had sex, it'd be like, oh, okay, well, you're like half the population or whatever, maybe 30%. And that's the big change. And then you wonder how much smartphones and social media and dating apps have affected it. I know dating apps have, but that's just a consequence of smartphone and internet technology. And there's other factors, like I said, the time being wasted on phones by men, that, you know, they could be out trying to meet somebody, or they're just spending too much time playing video games. Or are they playing video games because they're not having any success out there, and it's only the top percent that are getting dates, getting laid, because the women are the gatekeepers of sex and they have the options and the leverage in the dating game. So a lot of guys are getting shut out, and technology is facilitating their selectiveness, and it's making it easy for the women to choose higher status partners while leaving the majority of us behind. And a lot of us have just become invisible, so therefore may as well play video games or just do other things, get distracted. And then pornography is also another thing that's been a detriment and has caused probably a lot of men to be lonely because it's had a bad effect on their psyche, I believe, especially if it's porn addiction. Not only are you wasting a lot of hours of the day, but the expectations in your mind are being fried by images that can never live up to what happens in real life. So you're not turned on by women in real life because it's not the same as what you're observing in pornography. And yeah, that's all self-explanatory. It's giving you a false sense of reality, and it's damaging to the dopamine system. So there's all that going on, and it all stems from technology, from smartphones, the internet. And that's where we're at. So some alarming statistics. Like I said, I was a virgin till late, but it's amazing how the goalpost has shifted. If I was 28 years old now and still a virgin, it would not be considered weird or out of the ordinary. I would not be an outlier in any way. But back in the day, I was an outlier. Although I don't know if I really trust these statistics either. Like, how are they obtaining these numbers? Are people actually disclosing information about their sex life in that many numbers? Or are they just using a small sample size and then just extrapolating that? Or how are they really figuring out who's a virgin, who isn't? I guess there's ways to do it. I mean, AI can do a lot, and I'm sure there's ways they figure it out. But who's to say all the men would even admit to being a virgin? Maybe some that are taking part in surveys are still embarrassed and still feel there's a stigma to it, so they just lie and say they aren't virgins. I know guys growing up, and I was guilty of this myself, because being a virgin for so long and then obviously not having a girlfriend for basically my entire 20s and even 30s to some degree. And people would always ask you, like, hey, what's wrong? You haven't found a girl? Like, you don't have a girlfriend? Do you have a girlfriend? What's going on? And then you always got to like downplay it and kind of do that whole spiel we're all familiar with. It's like, oh, I just haven't found the right girl, or yeah, I haven't met the right one. But that's kind of a cope, as the kids say. We cope with the reality and we say what we need to say. Say what you need to say, just to get by. And I'll look into more of the statistics, but all the headlines I'm seeing, record high this and 10%. What is this? New data shows record high in male virginity. 10% of men aged 22, or sorry, the sex recession also reveals that 25% of men in the millennial group haven't had a partner in over a year. Yeah, just stuff like that. And then, the 50% stat. But I guess that's going to go up as the boomers die off, because if you look at men as an entire population, maybe it's still only 20 or 30% of men that are virgins, but that's because 90% of boomers aren't, or 95% of boomers are not virgins. So once they off, that number is going to get higher. I bet it's going to be 50% of all men are virgins. Like, that's going to be a solid, quantifiable number. And it might even get worse. There might be 60, 70% of men are virgins, which means that only the top half, or top 30 or 40%, are sleeping with all the women. So they're the men having sex are probably having multiple partners. And yeah, it's either multiple partners or nothing. It's all or nothing, it seems like, in the in this reality, in this universe of getting laid, lack of a better term. But I'll look into the statistics more. And like I say, I was a late bloomer, and that's, I have a whole story about that I may share with you. Maybe even in the next video, we'll see how it goes. But it's interesting, and 2026, are people going to start getting off the dating apps, and is that going to turn around, or more men going to start having a bit of success and go on more of a self-improvement journey and see what that brings about, if it spawns any positive change in men's lives, and then collectively it'll raise us up. What is it? A rising tide lifts all boats. I think if more women get off the dating apps, they'll be more open and more accepting of the men they meet in real life, and more men and women will connect that way. But yeah, I think it's just the technology and the social media and all that that's a culprit for sure, but there's also other factors, and I think I've touched on those in past videos, so you can check those out. But anyways, I'm very tired, as you can see from my eyes, and I had a little bit of an eczema thing. It feels like very dry up here. Don't know what's going on with that. I'll have to maybe get some better sleep, some better moisturizer. But yeah, let me know what you think about the male virginity problem, the dating crisis. If you're new, feel free to say hi, leave a like, leave a thumbs up. It helps the channel. You can leave a super thanks if you really want to support me. I also have a PayPal donation link. You can donate to the channel. And yeah, let's keep this thing moving. Thanks for the couple new subscribers since the last video, 850, I believe. So let's get to 1,000 here. Let's do it. Kind of a new goal for the first part of this year, this new year. Anyways, hope you have a great weekend. I hope your new year is off to a good start. And let me know how you're doing out there. Once again, God bless you. Peace. Denny. We'll see you on the next one. Bye-bye.